The Clockmaker's Granddaughter, a timeless love story, Chapter 1. The Silent Timepiece. The crisp, clean air of Burlington, Vermont, usually brought Penelope "Penny" Sterling a sense of serene contentment. At 75, she'd spent her life surrounded by the gentle tick-tock of her grandfather Arthur's clocks, a symphony of time that had defined her childhood and much of her adult life. Now, after his passing, the silence in his old workshop felt deafening. Penny, herself a retired archivist, was meticulously sifting through his vast collection, a task both melancholic and deeply personal. Arthur Sterling hadn't just been a clockmaker. He was a master craftsman, a whimsical genius known throughout New England for his intricate mechanisms and his almost obsessive fascination with the very concept of time. Not just its measurement, but its deeper meaning, its relentless flow, its hidden currents. He'd been a quiet, somewhat melancholic man, living a life of precision and solitude after her grandmother's death, rarely speaking of his early years. Among the polished brass and gleaming gears of countless working clocks, Penny found one that stood out. It was small, no larger than her palm, made of tarnished silver and dull, unpolished steel. It clearly didn't work. There were no hands, no winding mechanism, and its face was etched with a series of strange, repeating symbols, spirals, interlocking circles, faint constellations, and what looked like musical notes arranged in peculiar sequences. It was beautiful in a stark, unsettling way, completely unlike her grandfather's usual elegant designs. She'd never seen it before. It felt like a secret. Penny ran a finger over the cold metal. Her grandfather had been a man of meticulous order, yet this piece seemed incomplete, a puzzle with missing pieces. She remembered him hunched over his workbench, magnifying glass to his eye, muttering about the true language of time. She'd always thought it was just eccentric clockmaker talk. Now, looking at this silent timepiece, she wondered. The clock felt heavy, not just in her hand, but in her heart. A silent weight of unspoken history. She knew her grandfather had traveled extensively in his youth, driven by the economic hardships of the Great Depression. But he'd rarely spoken of that period, dismissing it with a wave of his hand. Times were hard, Penny. Best left in the past. But this clock felt like a deliberate invitation back to that past. Determined to understand, Penny carefully wrapped the silent timepiece and set out. Her search for answers led her to Dr. Elias Thorne, a young, ambitious historian and art conservator at a prestigious university in Boston, specializing in rare mechanical devices and their creators. She'd found him through an obscure academic journal article he'd written about chronological symbolism in early 20th century mechanisms. Elias, barely 30, with an unruly mop of dark curls and an infectious enthusiasm, met her in his cluttered office, brimming with books and diagrams. He took the clock from her, his eyes widening in awe as he examined it. "Mrs. Sterling," he breathed, his voice hushed. "This isn't merely a non-working clock. This is a cipher, a work of art. Your grandfather, he was brilliant. This is a chronological encryption device." He explained that the symbols were not decorative. They were a complex code based on a unique blend of mathematical, astronomical, and perhaps even musical principles. The lack of hands, the subtle variations in the etched lines, the very absence of functionality. All of it pointed to a mechanism designed not to tell time, but to contain it, to convey a message outside of conventional chronology. As Elias began the painstaking process of analysis and decryption, Penny often sat with him, sharing stories of her grandfather. She told him about Arthur's quiet melancholy, his passion for the stars, his love for old classical music, and his insistence that everything has its own rhythm, its own time. Elias meticulously cross-referenced his findings with historical celestial charts, ancient musical scales, and complex numerical sequences Arthur had sometimes used in his workshop notes. The clock, once a silent enigma, began to hum with a hidden language. Slowly, painstakingly, the cipher began to yield its secrets. The symbols were indeed a narrative, a story unfolding in reverse chronological order, then jumping across time. It began to tell a story of profound, almost mythical love, a deep connection that seemed to defy the very laws of reality. It was a love story, intricate and beautiful, yet tinged with a deep, pervasive sadness. The initial decrypted fragments spoke of a young Arthur, brimming with idealistic dreams, living in a small, vibrant, artistic community in the Appalachian Mountains of North Carolina, a place Penny had never known her grandfather to speak of. It spoke of hardship, of hunger, of the crushing weight of the Depression, but it also spoke of light. It spoke of a girl, a brilliant, spirited artist with eyes that held the universe. Theodora Finch. Chapter 2. The Maestro of Time's Secrets. The cipher in the clock began to unveil the intensity of Arthur's youthful love for Theodora. It described their shared dreams, their whispered conversations under star-filled Appalachian skies, their belief that art and ingenuity could transcend the despair of their era. Thea was a painter, her canvases exploding with color and emotion, echoing the vibrancy of the mountains. Arthur was her counterpoint, seeking order and beauty in the precise movements of gears, seeing the universe in the rhythm of a clock's heart. August 12th, 1934. Her eyes are like the distant nebula, vast and mysterious. Theo, she sees the hidden colors of the world. She understands the rhythm even when the music stops. April 1st, 1935. The economic winds tear us apart. She leaves today for the city, for work. My heart fragments like shattered crystal. I vow to build a mechanism that can bind time, that can find her, no matter the distance, no matter the years. The messages became more complex, less about their shared past and more about a desperate hope for connection. Arthur's entries within the clock indicated a profound sense of loss after Theo's departure, a grief so deep it fueled his obsession with time itself. He saw the clock not merely as a device to measure minutes, but as a potential conduit, a way to transcend linear existence, to bridge the vast chasm that had opened between him and Theo. "This is extraordinary, Mrs. Sterling," Elias exclaimed one afternoon, his eyes gleaming with excitement, surrounded by printouts of decrypted symbols. "Your grandfather wasn't just building clocks, he was building a theory. He believed time wasn't a straight line. He believed in what he called temporal echoes, emotional or energetic imprints that could ripple through the fabric of existence. He was trying to create a mechanism that could not only record the past, but potentially interact with it." or even receive transmissions from an alternative temporal reality. Penny scoffed gently. A time machine, Elias? My grandfather was a genius, but he was a clockmaker, not a science fiction writer. Perhaps not a time machine in the traditional sense, Elias mused, but a receiver. The symbols aren't just a record of his memories. Some of them, they detail events he couldn't possibly have known at the time, events that happened to Theo after they separated. This was the first truly jarring discovery. The clock revealed that Theo had struggled in the city, working odd jobs, but never abandoning her art. It described a specific studio apartment she had, a distinct scar on her left wrist from a childhood accident, even the name of a specific painting she was working on years after she left Arthur. Details he could not have known, details no one in his isolated world in Vermont would have known. How could he know this? Penny wondered aloud, tracing the intricate symbols. Unless he was in contact with her? Not directly, I think, Elias replied, shaking his head. The encoding here suggests a more indirect method. He was trying to feel her, to sense her life's trajectory, to pull fragmented information from the temporal echoes he believed in. He was trying to maintain a connection beyond physical means. The clock revealed Arthur's profound regret, his belief that Theo had died young, broken by hardship, a tragedy he had carried throughout his life. But the symbols also contained information that contradicted this belief. They suggested that Theo had not only survived, but had lived a long, fulfilling life, continuing to create art, finding her own quiet joy. Arthur's mechanism was not just a record of his loss, but a strange, prophetic chronicle of her enduring spirit. It was as if, through his sheer will and genius, he had managed to glimpse fragments of her future, a future where she thrived. The climax of the clock's message was the most astonishing. The final sequence of symbols, painstakingly deciphered by Elias, formed not just words, but a complex, coded diagram. It was a geographical coordinate, pointing to a small, unassuming town deep in the Appalachian Mountains of North Carolina, the very region Theo had come from. And etched around the coordinates were 3 simple yet profound words. Her final answer. Mrs. Sterling, Elias said, his voice trembling with excitement. I think your grandfather wasn't just sending a message into the past. I think he was waiting for a message from the future, from her. I think Theo answered him. Chapter 3, her final answer. The discovery of the final coded coordinates electrified Penny. Her final answer. It implied a reciprocal connection, a love that defied the boundaries of linear time and physical separation. The idea that her melancholic grandfather, who had seemed to live so much in his own precise measured world, had harbored such a grand, almost fantastical, secret love brought tears to her eyes. Elias, equally captivated by the revelation, used his academic connections to research the Appalachian region indicated by the coordinates. He discovered that the small, once vibrant artistic community Theo had belonged to had largely dispersed during the Depression, but a few families had remained, their descendants still living quietly in the hollows and valleys. Their search led them to the Finch family, distant relatives of Theodora, who had maintained a small private museum in their ancestral home dedicated to local artists and their history. It was there, among dusty canvases and forgotten sculptures, that Penny found it. It wasn't a clock, it was a painting. A large, vibrant canvas, bursting with the colors of the Appalachian landscape, painted with Theo's unmistakable style. It depicted a solitary figure, a man with a keen, almost visionary gaze, standing by a workbench, surrounded by intricate clock gears. And at the man's feet, woven into the very fabric of the painting's foreground, were the familiar intricate symbols from Arthur's silent timepiece. The same spirals, the same interlocking circles, the faint constellations, the peculiar musical notes. Penny gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. It was Theo's answer, a message in visual form echoing Arthur's own coded mechanical art. The painting was titled The Weaver of Time. Working together, Penny and Elias began to analyze the painting. Elias used his knowledge of cryptography and art history, while Penny, drawing on her archivist's eye for detail and her deep understanding of her grandfather's mind, saw connections others might miss. The symbols weren't just painted onto the canvas. They were subtly integrated into the brushstrokes, layered into the landscape, almost hidden in plain sight. It was a masterwork of artistic encryption. She knew, Penny whispered, her voice thick with emotion. She knew he was trying to reach her. She felt his connection. She answered him through her art, just as he spoke through his clocks. The painting's symbols not only confirmed Arthur's messages, but expanded upon them. They described Theo's life, her struggles, her triumphs, her enduring love for the mountains, and most poignantly, her persistent, almost inexplicable feeling of being watched over, of being connected to someone across the miles and years. She spoke of waking from dreams of gears and cogs, of feeling a gentle hum in the air, a sense of timeless presence. She called it her eternal echo. The painting revealed that Theo had indeed lived a long, full life, finding recognition for her art. She had married, had children, but her eternal echo of Arthur remained. The final layers of the painting's encryption, hidden within the patterns of light and shadow, contained Theo's profound message. She had always felt Arthur's presence, his longing, his dedication, and she had loved him deeply and truly until her dying day. The painting was her final artistic testament to a love that transcended physical separation. Chapter 4. The Unbroken Connection. The revelation of the painting, The Weaver of Time, was a profound shock to Penny, but also an immense comfort. Her quiet, melancholic grandfather, who had seemed to live a life somewhat detached from passionate love, had harbored a connection so powerful it had spanned decades, communicated across states, and transcended the very notion of direct contact. He wasn't just a clockmaker. He was a silent poet of temporal longing. Elias, ever the academic, theorized that Arthur's unique genius wasn't just in clockmaking, but in his profound intuition for unseen connections. He believed Arthur had unknowingly tapped into a universal field of consciousness, a quantum entanglement of the heart, as Elias poetically put it, which allowed him to perceive Theo's life and respond to her presence across time. Theo, in turn, with her own artistic sensitivity, had intuitively picked up on Arthur's efforts, transforming her feelings into coded works of art. Their love was a two-way current, a shared, silent language of the soul. Penny spent weeks in the Appalachian town, learning about Theo's life, meeting her descendants, a family of artists and dreamers. strikingly similar to her own. They had vaguely known of an Arthur, a youthful love from a long-lost past, but never the depth of the connection, or the extraordinary way it had manifested. Sharing the story of Arthur's clock and Theo's painting brought two branches of a family, once severed by the cruel hand of fate, back together through the elegant dance of art and time. There was a bittersweet poignancy to it all. Arthur and Theo had never physically reunited after their separation. They had lived separate lives, found different paths, yet their love, communicated through their artistic mediums, had remained vibrant, a constant undercurrent beneath the surface of their everyday existence. Penny realized that her grandfather's melancholy wasn't one of unrequited love, but of a longing for a physical reunion that was simply not meant to be. A deep sorrow for a reality that was just out of reach. But he had found a way to bridge the gap through his unique gift. Penny felt a profound shift within herself. Her own grief for her grandfather was transformed. She saw him not just as a man who had lost a great love, but as someone who had loved so deeply, so creatively, that he had found a way to keep that love alive, even across vast stretches of time and space. His obsession with clocks, his murmurs about the true language of time, were not eccentricities, but profound expressions of his soul. She returned to Burlington with a renewed sense of purpose. She began categorizing Arthur's entire collection, not just as historical artifacts, but as expressions of his deeper philosophy. She dedicated a special display in his old workshop, now more of a private museum, to the silent timepiece and a detailed replica of Theo's painting. She even considered creating a digital archive of their love story, ensuring their unique connection would live on. Penny also found a new appreciation for the passage of time. It was not just a relentless march forward, but a tapestry woven with threads of the past, present, and even the subtle echoes of the future. Her grandfather, the clockmaker, had shown her that love, true love, wasn't bound by minutes or hours or years. It could find its own way, forge its own connections, and echo across the ages, a timeless melody heard by those with hearts open enough to listen. She often sat in the quiet workshop, the gentle tick-tock of Arthur's many clocks surrounding her. She would hold the silent timepiece, feeling its cold metal warm in her hand, imagining Arthur and Theo, separated by circumstance, yet eternally connected by their shared language of art and their boundless love. The clock, once a symbol of a lost love, became a testament to an eternal one, a reminder that some connections transcend the physical, living on in the unseen currents of the universe, waiting for the right moment, the right person, to finally reveal their true, timeless melody. Chapter 5: The Harmony of Ages. As the seasons turned in Burlington, Penelope's understanding of her grandfather's timeless love story deepened into a profound spiritual realization. She started a correspondence with Theo's family, sharing anecdotes, photographs, and the almost unbelievable details of Arthur's clock. They, in turn, sent her copies of Theo's personal journals, revealing her own reflections on the hum she felt, the dreams of gears and mechanisms, the subtle sense of a guiding presence that had always accompanied her, pushing her through hardship and inspiring her art. Theo's journals detailed her own struggles after leaving the Appalachian community, the relentless poverty, the artistic rejections, But woven through her despair was a consistent, unwavering belief in an unseen connection, a guiding force. She attributed it to her artistic muse, her spirit guide, but Penny now recognized it as the constant, loving presence of Arthur's efforts to reach her. November 5th, 1937. The city is cold, unforgiving. My art feels small, insignificant. Yet sometimes, in the dead of night, I feel a gentle hum, a resonance, like a distant clock. It whispers courage. It tells me to paint. He is there, somehow. June 10th, 1945. The war is over. I find purpose in color again. He never leaves me, the one who hums. I know he searches. I will paint our message into the light. Penny realized that Theo's most complex works, the ones with the deepest hidden layers of symbolism, were often created after moments of intense personal despair or profound inspiration. They were her replies to Arthur, her silent acknowledgments of his timeless love, coded into the very fabric of her canvases. The weaver of time. Painting was the crescendo of this artistic dialogue, a final, complete answer to Arthur's lifelong query. This understanding brought Penny not only peace, but a revolutionary new perspective on grief and connection. Her grandfather's life, once tinged with the sadness of an unfulfilled love, was now illuminated by the extraordinary reality of a love that defied conventional boundaries. He had not lost Theo. He had simply loved her in a way few could comprehend, maintaining a bond that transcended the physical realm. She began hosting small, intimate gatherings in Arthur's workshop, sharing the story of the silent timepiece and the weaver of time. Local artists, historians, and even physicists came, drawn by the unique blend of love, mystery, and theoretical possibility. Elias Thorne, now a regular visitor, became a key collaborator, helping Penny to formally document the scientific and historical significance of Arthur's and Theo's works. He believed their combined creations represented a unique, perhaps even unintentional, exploration of quantum entanglement in human consciousness, a fascinating overlap between art, love, and cutting-edge physics. Penny learned to find a quiet joy in the everyday rhythms of life, no longer haunted by the what-ifs of her grandfather's past. She felt a profound connection to both Arthur and Theo, their love story now interwoven with her own existence. She often visited the local art museum, standing before the large, abstract pieces by Theo that had found their way there over the years, feeling a profound sense of connection to the hidden symbols within them. One blustery autumn evening, as the last leaves swirled outside the workshop window, Penny sat with the silent timepiece in her lap. The familiar tick-tock of Arthur's other clocks filled the room. She closed her eyes, and for a moment she felt it, a faint, harmonious hum, a soft resonance in the very air around her. It was the echo of a love that had defied time, a melody that had found its way across decades, a testament to the enduring power of human connection. Her grandfather, the clockmaker, had taught her that time was not a cage, but a canvas. And on that canvas, with threads of ingenuity, longing, and boundless love, he and Theo had woven a masterpiece, a timeless symphony that continued to play forever. And Penny, the clockmaker's granddaughter, was finally ready to listen and to share its beautiful, unending harmony with the world.